right. I'm so excited today to be with my good friend, colleague, partner, all the things, Linda Austin, and I'll let her introduce herself in detail. But Linda is a person of great faith, a person that's well connected, a person that has done just about everything in the addiction and recovery arena. She's started an organization, she's led organizations, she's done all the pieces and parts, all with a servant's heart, all with just everyday knowledge, but also professional knowledge. And so I just admire her so much and wanted to bring her on to share some of her wealth of information with families and friends and loved ones of those of individuals that are seeking recovery. And today she's going to talk about several different things. But before she does, I want her to introduce herself and tell you more about what she does and why this topic is so important to her. So Linda, yay.
Thanks, Angela. I appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
inviting me to spend time with you today. Appreciate all of those nice things you said. I grew up in Buchanan County, so my
Virginia.
family, yep, yes, Buchanan County, Virginia, in the coal fields, and so my father was a coal miner, and so I have a real understanding of why our area in far southwest Virginia was targeted when Oxycontin became available on the market. We have very labor intensive jobs here, and many people were injured in coal mining, logging, farming. And so my father, when he was 38 years old, he was buried when the roof of a mine he was working in came down on him. And so for 6 months, he was in a full body cast. And so, you know, thankfully, they were able to dig him out. He did recover, and he went right back to the coal mine because that's what people do here. That mountain grit was alive and well in my father. And so in 1958, the injury happened, and he did not retire from the mines until 1980. So, my family, we were very fortunate that Oxycontin wasn't on the market. My life would have been very different had it been. So, we moved to Abingdon, Virginia, and I was very fortunate in high school as a 17-year-old, became involved with the business block program and went to work for attorneys. And 35 years later, I retired from that job and I went back to school and got a human services degree. So in the law office, I saw many people's lives destroyed and affected severely by drugs and alcohol. And so I became involved in the faith community, in 89. And so started working with folks through ministry coming out of addiction and also out of incarceration. And so for a paralegal, it's very easy to set up a nonprofit. So I did that. So I set up Hands and Feet Ministries, which is a jail and prison ministry. And when I went back to school to get my human services degree, I started working, doing community engagement with local nonprofits that were working with folks post incarceration and also in addiction and recovery. And so began as the chair of the Appalachian Substance Abuse Coalition, which covers the 13 counties and 3 cities in far southwest Virginia.
Yes.
But we also, ASAC does, we look at addiction treatment and recovery. And so often incarceration is part of that.
Absolutely.
Addiction often leads people to incarceration, often leads people, who wouldn't think about stealing to steal when they get dope sick. And so it all sort of meshes together. And so ASAC, as that director and also the director of Hands and Feet, we work a lot with the same populations. And so, we Hands and Feet, we go into correctional facilities and do classes and do church services, we're able to take food in the Tennessee system, not so much in Virginia. But it's funny how different the systems are and what they
Oh
allow and what
yeah.
they don't. But we do what we can for those who are still incarcerated, but we do a lot of reentry work as well, and we work with the families of those who are incarcerated, especially if the the person or people or families who are taking care of the children of the incarcerated are struggling. We come alongside them and help with the kids, and
Yes.
back to school and Christmas especially, because often those extra expenses they just can't afford it.
Oh
And
yeah.
so we do that together, and also direct a ministry to hikers on the Appalachian Trail, which of course it runs 2,190 miles most years. It moves a little bit. The mileage changes a little bit because the path has changed as it goes through folks' pasture land and whatnot. So they change a little bit, but 2,190 miles for the most part. Can you imagine walking 2,000 miles? Me
No,
either.
well,
Me either.
the guy that helps me with my dogs is an avid hiker, and he's walked all the Appalachian Trail. He's been out west and done all these
Wow.
things out, and all these other places.
Yes.
There's three
Yes.
trails that are like big in the U.S., and if they all
Yes.
intersect somewhere, anyway, he's done all of them and done the
Oh,
intersect. Anyway,
wow. He's drawn
oh
the
yes, he
Triple Crown,
yes,
is what they call that.
Triple
Yes.
Crown. He's one of the
Yes.
only people in
Wow.
Tennessee that's done that. So
Wow.
yeah, and
That's
he's a young
amazing.
man. Oh, I
That's
know.
amazing.
Well, tell me
So I
before
was
you
just
move
going
on,
to say, all of those mesh together.
oh, I know.
ASAC, yes, ASAC, we have, I direct a ministry during trail days, and ASAC, we have a tent at the Trail Days Festival, and we do a lot of Narcan training. We do a couple hundred Narcan trainings in 3 days. And so, Hands and Feet, as well as Trail Days Ministry and ASAC, we all work together. We all, it's so important for people to carry Narcan,
Yeah.
whether you know any of those people or not, right?
Yeah.
Those people
Yeah,
drives
those
us
people.
crazy, that verbiage. Yes, but we want people to be safe wherever they're at. We don't want anyone to experience um, someone dying at their feet from an overdose. Most
Yeah.
overdose deaths are preventable. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of carrying Narcan. Just that
Mhm.
simple. Yes.
Yeah.
And so we all do things together. And I love that. I love that we're all part of a community that comes together for the goodness,
Right, for the greater
for the
good. Yeah.
wellness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Well, I was
Absolutely.
going to ask you, since you're talking about trails and things, this is not a question I had to ask you, but it's interesting. Do you see a lot of substance use with the trail people, the people that hike, the hikers?
True hikers, no.
Mhm.
But what we see, the festival this year, the Trail Days Festival is always the weekend after Mother's Day.
Okay.
So the town actually starts on May, I believe, the 15th, 16th, and 17th. The ministry, we start with a cookout on the Wednesday of that week. So this year it's the 13th. But the festival brings a lot of posers,
Mhm.
party
Yeah.
people,
The
people
party
coming to,
people.
yeah, coming to the festival rather than actual through hikers. And so we do have a lot of through hikers, but Damascus is less than 600 people now most days, and during trail days we grow to 20 to 25,000 people.
Wow.
Trail Days
Mm.
Festival, and
And
so
man,
town,
by through hikers, you mean hikers that are going all the way through. Yeah. They're
yes,
not just
yes,
not just hiking
right,
right there locally. Yeah.
right. We get a lot of section hikers as well, but during trail days there's a lot of people who used to hike the trail, who have through hiked before in years past, but we get a lot of just party people,
Yeah.
and that those people do a lot of substance. They drink a lot of alcohol. They do drugs. I mean, ASAC a few years ago, when fentanyl really started kicking up in our area, we had a lot of yard signs made that said, there's fentanyl, like
Yeah.
don't take a chance. And we put those up around town. There's one congregated area where the hikers tent,
Yeah.
and there's several acres that the town owns, and so we put those up all over the place there. And our attorney general was down here, and he saw those signs. And when I was introduced to him as the director of ASAC, he said, "Are you responsible for all those signs?" And I said,
You're the
"ASAC,
fentanyl, yeah,
yes."
the fentanyl awareness people.
Yes, ASAC absolutely is. And so, but we had a hiker. Um, she pulled one of those up and she carried it over her head in the parade through town.
How
And
great.
yes, we were thrilled. I hope she took it up the trail with her.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
we did see it. She had it strapped to her backpack at one point. I hope she took it with her. Because people need to be aware,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
they're using on the trail or a lot of times when they go into towns,
Well,
they'll
now,
party a little bit. And
tell me about, because some of our viewers may be wondering about this. Everybody has heard about the opioid crisis now. Now they hear about the fentanyl epidemic.
mhm,
What kind of resources are out there for the general person to find and to use, like fentanyl testing strips? Where
yes,
could most people go to get that, and how do you even use them? Can you
yes.
explain that to us?
Well, Narcan and fentanyl strips are available. Of course, we're in Virginia.
Right? Hmm.
Our community service boards across Virginia, I believe there are 40 altogether. We have here in our region, we have five. But most of those community service boards have those things available. If folks have a harm reduction program, which we're fortunate to have two here in our region, they
Yeah.
can dispense those things as well. And Tennessee is very comparable.
Yeah.
They have a lot of community coalitions like the Sullivan County Anti-Drug Coalition or
Right.
the Peer line in Tennessee. So the health departments very often have those things available. So depending on where people are, they can reach out to if they have a health department for their state or Commonwealth, they can either get them there or they can find out through the health department where to get them. And
So, how do you use a fentanyl testing strip?
it's very easy. It's very similar to like a urine strip. Like
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
just sample the drug on the strip and then it will turn colors.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, Narcan is, it's just, we do not use the injectable. We use the nasal, which
Yeah,
I
right here.
use. Yes. I use allergy spray every morning, and a lot of
Hmm.
people do. That's what, when I'm doing trainings, I tell folks,
Yeah.
it's as simple as allergy
Mhm.
spray.
Blow that
You
off there.
just put your fingers on both sides, push that plunger. It's a meter dose. And you don't have to worry if it's a 2-year old that's gotten into something, if they've gotten into your medication, or we have seen a lot of children overdose in meth houses,
Yeah.
where things are lying around or, things are being cooked up or
Oh, yeah.
there's residue. A lot of dogs, canine units have gone down sniffing in drug houses. A lot of kids go down. Um, yeah, I was just at the National Prescription and Illicit Drug Summit in Nashville last week. And, there was a presenter that talked about like the whole group of kids, kindergarten kids in a classroom
Mm.
had overdosed because one of the kids brought candy to school and shared with his class, and it was edibles. And so those kids went down, and all of them in the class had to be taken to the hospital. So, it's so important if folks are using edibles, it's so important to secure them, especially if they're candies or cookies or brownies, things that kids
Oh yeah.
seek after. Yeah,
Hmm.
any kind of sweets or desserts. It's so important that they protect them, and make sure that they're securely out of the reach of
Hmm.
kids. Kids can
Yeah.
climb places that adults cannot, right? uh,
And I'll share that like here in Tennessee, and I don't know if y'all, I'm sure you do this in Virginia somewhere, but I'm not, I don't know just exactly, but in Tennessee, all the drug coalitions also carry the prescription drug lock boxes that you can get for free. And, you just have to say, you just have to say that you have a need, present with a need. I have young
yes,
kids, I have animals, I have older people, I have this. Or
yes.
I think that, it's possible that somebody may be in my home that may want some of my medication. So that we can give you out of any coalition, a prescription drug lock box that
Hmm.
locks with a key or a combination, whichever you prefer. And those
Yes.
you can get for free. Hmm.
Yes, ASAC, we have those, and also the community service boards
Yeah.
have those, most of them available. Yes, that's very important for people
Yes.
just to secure their medication. And of course, twice a year, April and October, there are drug takebacks, DEA
Yeah.
drug takebacks, and that's across
All
the
across the
nation.
country. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, it is so important to clean out your medicine cabinets. We know 54% of the people that were surveyed said during their addiction they got medication out of someone's medicine cabinet that didn't belong to them.
Yeah.
So we know many addictions have started from medicine cabinets. People have
Hmm.
gone to get an ibuprofen or an aspirin, and they find a Loratab or Percocet, and they innocently take that, and life seems to be better for a while, especially
Yeah.
if they have trauma in the past,
Yeah.
if they've experienced neglect or abuse or sexual abuse in the past, they don't think about it, when they're taking that medication. And so, you know, they
Yeah.
think life's better for a minute, but then they
I did.
realize,
That was exactly me. The first time I took a hydrocodone, I said, "Oh,
yeah,
this is how I'm supposed to feel. Is this how everybody feels
yes,
all the time?
yes,
Why have I not ever felt like this?" And I felt
yes,
totally normal. There was no high that I thought, no
yes,
euphoria, no anything. It was just like, oh, finally I can relax and I can navigate the world, like everybody else.
yeah,
But
yes,
then,
yes.
what happens then?
You know, the monster is created, and
Mm-hmm.
it demands to be fed,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
it's just, I have talked to so many people that, had wisdom teeth cut out and were
Hmm.
prescribed, or they
Yeah.
were in a car accident, or they had a sports injury or a work
Hmm.
injury, and it was just such an innocent thing.
Yes.
People think often, and they speak out of ignorance because they just don't know, but they think, people in addiction were just looking to get high, and that's how it started. Well, for most people that is 100% wrong. you
Yeah.
know
All the wrong. Hmm.
yes, it is. Very few people are using socially or casually and then end up
Hmm.
in addiction.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't work out that way. It's
So let's
just,
talk about that just for a minute because,
mhm,
I was very fortunate that I did not end up incarcerated for doing something crazy. And
mhm,
my addiction came to an end before that point. But I knew at that point I was headed in a direction of doing something that was legal. I could see
mhm,
it in my mind, I could feel it in my
mhm.
heart. And I'm just so grateful to God that, none of those things happened
Absolutely.
because I could have ended up incarcerated. But
Yes.
so many people do. And when they do end up incarcerated, for the first time, especially the first time, their family and friends have no idea what to do to help them, to support them,
Mhm,
any of that. And I know that you do a jail ministry and go in the jails a lot. So
mhm,
my question is, what part of the justice system do you feel like
mhm.
every person needs to know about? Um, or every person really needs help navigating like the biggest misconception or the biggest like question mark, when someone gets incarcerated, what do their families need to know and need to know how to go, what to do. I couldn't
Right.
think of what to say.
Excuse me, we were just having this conversation last week. You know,
Hmm.
people are often very confused by the difference between jail and prison, right?
Yes. Yes.
Jail, we have regional jails here.
Hmm.
In Virginia, we used to have county jails, and
Hmm.
Tennessee still has county jails for the
County
most
jails.
part.
Hmm.
But we have regional jails here in Virginia, and it's they're more strict, honestly, than the prisons are as far as visitation. Like if you're in the regional jail, it, people in the regional jail, if they have prison time to serve, they want to go. They want to go to prison because jail is no contact visit. You video. And if you have a child, you're not touching that child as long as you're in the jail. Prisons, I mean, contact visits. You go in, there's a background check done, you're patted down, you're searched, you go through metal detectors. But then you get to go in and, hug your loved one and hold their hand when you pray with them. And, in the jails, it's just not that case. It's so transitional in the jails. It is much cleaner in the jails as far as substance. Of course, often the men in the jail, once they reach trustee status, they're allowed to go out
Yeah.
and do community service. But women normally are not because of the difference in the body cavities. That's all it
Right.
is.
Right.
People don't understand that, but it's just, women can carry things in easier than men.
Right.
And so it feels like discrimination, but, they're just
There's
trying
a
to keep
reason.
everybody safe. Yes.
Hmm.
But I would suggest to people that, if I had somebody locked up, I would immediately reach out to the chaplain. The
Hmm.
chaplain, every one of the facilities has a chaplain. They sometimes are just overwhelmed. It's often one compared to, 1,000 men and women in there. But the chaplain, um, that is that's the contact I would make first. They can, if your loved one, they can get them a Bible. They can sort of guide you through, find out what the visitation requirements are if you're able to
Yeah.
visit or video chat. Just go on the facility's website and it will tell you the mailing address, how you can put money on their account so they can call you. All of those things are laid out in great detail on the facility's website. And of course, if it's a state facility, you can go to like Tennessee Department of Corrections, and then each local facility is broken down in there. And that specific information is on the website. But I would reach out to the chaplain. That would be the first place I would start. Of
Yeah.
course, when you want to become a visitor there, you're going to have to go through background checks, and you have to go through training to find
Hmm.
out what to wear, what not to wear, what to do,
Yeah.
not to do. When we first started going in, I was reading through the handbook, and my husband and I were traveling, and I was reading the handbook, and I would read something to him, and I'd say, I wonder why that's in there, and he would
Yeah.
say, honey, I'm sure somebody did that before,
Yeah. Hmm.
um, but like I never thought about one of the things. If you're in a correctional facility, you're not supposed to run. Period. If you're with a group and they're way ahead of you, you're not supposed to run to catch them because the officers that are in there to protect you and the correctional residents, if you're running, they think that either somebody is running after you or you're running towards somebody.
Yeah.
And so they are on high alert all the time. And so don't run in a facility, which I never thought about.
No.
But it's just an indication to them when they see someone running, they think something's going down. And so just don't do that. Don't do anything that's going to attract attention to you.
Yeah.
But, every time you go in, they make you are required to sign in and sign out, and it asks you where you're going to be in the facility. So if something happens while you're in there, they will know where to come find you and get you out.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have only been locked down one time in in the 18 years I've been doing jail and prison ministry. I was in a local facility when two men escaped. Turns out they went out of the parking lot about 5 minutes before I got in there. So
Oh, wow.
they, it was discovered after I got in there that they were missing. So, but the officer, she's just like, stand against the wall. We're going to be fine. And she was actually a little more rattled by it than I was. She hadn't worked there very long. I guess I had been locked up far longer than she had so far, at that point. But, you know, people ask me all the time if I'm not uncomfortable or feel scared or unsafe in there. And I'm like, there are some men, we don't have a strictly women's prison around
Yeah,
here. So we go into the men's facility. And I said, honestly, I know if something happened while we were in there, something broke out in the room that we were in, I have no doubt some of those men would die to protect me.
I'm sure.
I
Yeah,
know that.
yeah.
And so I am as comfortable in there as I am in my living room. And I don't know if that's a good thing, but
I think
that's
that's good. And you're probably in one of the, inside a jail or prison is probably one of the safest places you could be because you have all those policemen and, and the officers there to protect you, where out on the outside world, you don't have any of that, you know.
well, in Tennessee, and I assume I don't go into Virginia a lot. I was certified in Virginia a few years ago, but didn't go in there very often because the Tennessee facility's closer to
Hmm.
me. But in Tennessee, once you are a certified volunteer, they consider you unpaid staff. So there's
Uh-huh.
usually not an officer with
Oh.
us in the room with us. I know. Now, when we go in and do Christmas banquets, and we have about 140 of the residents in there with us when we do that. And there normally is an officer in there when there's 140 of the residents with us in there. But, when we go in for service, we might have 50, 60, 70 men in there, and there's normally not an officer, which I mean, most of us have been going in for years, and
Mhm.
some of those guys feel like family to us, and so we're not we're not at all uncomfortable.
Well, now
We love
tell
them.
me this, so many people enter the justice system and in the jail. Well, they have to go to jail first, and are they're in active use. So when they get in there, um, every jail, at least in Tennessee, is a little bit different as to what services are offered to the
Hmm.
inmate. And I'm assuming in Virginia it's the same, and in other states in our country, everybody's a little bit different. Um,
Hmm.
Basic needs health care, of course, is going to be there. But, on the substance use treatment side, a lot of people enter, they're in active use, and that's the last time they've used is when they enter, and they're going through detox, they're going through withdrawal. I know you're not a doctor and
Yeah.
or a clinician, neither am I, but from where you've been and where your experience, I know you've seen people in withdrawal in the jail system. How would you describe that to a loved one that is on the outside thinking, okay, my son is in there. I'm sure he's going through withdrawal. Of course, you want to pray for them, but how do you think about that when your loved one is going through a terrible time and there may not be any help
Hmm.
medically for that specific thing?
Right. Well, uh, the benzodiazepine and the alcohol, they pay close attention because, withdrawal could be literally the death of
Deadly.
them, right? But um, I know many people who have suffered through withdrawals in correctional
Mm-hmm.
facilities. Of course, in the prison is full of drugs.
Hmm.
Um, they can get anything in there that they can get out here. And of course, once they use in prison, it's like you live in a fishbowl, and
Yeah.
it's very difficult to get away from it because, some of the guys that we've worked with through the years, they've been in withdrawal, and, their cellie has drugs. And
Hmm.
when they're dope sick, it's very difficult for them not to use when it's
Yeah.
right there in front of them.
Yeah.
So, really the only thing the family can do is pray and try to get them. I mean, we had one man that we had worked with for 11 years before he was released, and he just struggled so badly to stay away from it because it just seemed like I told him one day, I've never seen Satan fight as hard for anybody as he fought trying to hang on to
Mhm.
him. I mean, it was just like every time he would get into recovery for any length of time, they would move a Sally in with him that was using again, and he would
Mhm.
start all over again. Their doors are locked when they're in the compound. In the annex, their doors are not locked at night. The outside doors are locked, but inside, they have a lot more freedom in the annex. Um, but in the compound, they're locked in to a very small cell at night. And, especially if they're new in recovery or they're in withdrawals and their cellmate has drugs, it would be miraculous for them not to use. And
So
so,
let's talk about that just for a minute. And in some of these county jails and even in regional jails like in Virginia, there is treatment for substance use disorder. In others, there's not. But for the ones there that do not have that available to someone that will help with the withdrawal symptom, help
mhm,
curb that, and help them get through that. What would you recommend for the family as far as getting information out to the people that make the decisions about that? Because the reason that it's not in the jails, if substance use disorder treatment is not in jails, it's because of lack of funding, because they don't have the money to do
mhm.
it, and the lack of resources as far as staff in order to do all of that, because it takes a
Right,
whole nother staff to do all of that, with the meds and all these
right.
things. So in order to, what I'm getting to is, would you have the family members contact their legislatures and say, we want this in this jail, da 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 da, or we don't want, if they don't? I mean, everybody has their opinion,
Right,
but
right.
what would you
Well,
suggest to
and
somebody?
most of the time, like you were saying, it comes down to it's a matter of funding or lack of
Hmm.
funding or
Yep.
lack of staff. But if it's a business decision, and in most leadership areas, of course, some
Hmm.
are very concerned about the cost of people versus the bottom
Hmm.
dollar. But
Yeah.
I mean, it makes good sense in both ways. If you look at the
Yeah.
investment,
Hmm.
what it costs you not to have it in there, what it costs you not to have the personnel on staff to take care of them, what that's costing. I mean, at many of the facilities, the number of overdoses in a day is staggering, much less in a week.
Hmm.
Some facilities use a truckload of Narcan, and they still
Hmm.
lose people. Um, if if fentanyl gets in there, if it's a hot batch of anything,
Yeah.
and the residents are not allowed to use Narcan on each other. And so even if they can get to it, if they work in an office where there's Narcan, you know, they can't use it. They can't touch each other. And so it's just
Inmate to
incredibly
inmate. Is that
sad.
what you mean?
Right.
Inmate to inmate.
Right.
Hmm.
Inmate to inmate. Of course, staff can, but, you know, the cost of doing nothing is so much higher in the long run, especially if we're
And
losing people,
And what
you know.
about, I'm not saying that just because they get treatment in the justice while they're incarcerated, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be cured of their
Right.
of their addiction. Of course, addiction's never there's never a cure. You always have that in you, but just because they get treatment in there doesn't mean that they're going to have treatment on the outside. And so that's a whole nother
Mhm.
bear to poke. Is okay. Now
Right.
I'm
Right.
released, and I was in a place that allowed me to get treatment for this. Some sort of buprenorphine treatment in whatever form that it is,
Right.
Suboxone,
Right.
Sublocade, Subutex, all the different things,
Right.
um, injectable form. pill form, film form. There's a million. But when they get out, when they get out, they likely have no insurance and no job, so they don't have money to pay cash for it, and they don't have insurance to pay for that.
Hmm.
And, it's likely that they may use again and then get caught buying and selling on the street, which causes them to go back to jail again and the whole cycle. So
Right.
there's and this is, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I'm just saying, those are things that we look at and that parents need to understand that, if my child gets back out or my loved one or my partner gets back out, you know, try to look and find resources for your person before they get out so that you can help them continue that treatment if they did get started on the treatment inside. Because if they get out,
Right.
then the the risk of them, number one, overdosing, or number two, starting to use again, without the proper channels and buying and selling on
Right.
the street, buy, sell, swap,
Right.
trade, all that can land them right back in.
Well, and it's so important, especially the first 48 hours after release. It's so
Hmm.
important because, just like you and I going to the gym, if we're hitting it hard,
Yeah.
I mean, when my dad became sick, I was going to the gym 4 days a week and I was lifting heavy. And I was out with him for 3 weeks when he became ill and went right back to the gym. And the first day back, Angela lifted the same weight and ripped my shoulder because in 3 weeks, the
Hmm.
decline in my muscles,
Yeah.
I mean, it was unbelievable. And the, you know, the tolerance that people build when they're using,
Hmm.
even if they're away for weeks, much less months or years, and they go back to use. And of course, drugs on the street change overnight. I mean, the
Yeah.
potency. And so for them to use after not using for a while, they are so vulnerable. I mean, they're just, it's such a dangerous time. So, I tell people all the time, the the people that are incarcerated that we work with, I'm like, look, you need to go to a program.
Yeah.
When these doors pop open, you need to go to a program. Don't go
Hmm.
back to mama's. Don't go to your buddy. Don't sleep on anybody's couch. You need to go to a
Right.
program.
Great
Um,
advice. Hmm.
where there's accountability, where there's an adjustment period, where you can just catch your breath. Most
Hmm.
facilities don't want folks coming in to work for 2 or 3 weeks. They just
Yeah.
want them catch their breath, get their
Yeah.
legs under them, and just chill for a little bit, just
Hmm.
adjust. Just start making decisions on your own, right?
Hmm.
What to eat. Look at a menu and
Yeah.
decide what you want to eat.
Right.
That's not making decisions for a while. I mean, it
So
takes
different. Hmm.
a little bit to get back into that. And it's just so important. The warm handoff is crucial,
Yeah.
for people. But yes, I would call legislators and just say, this is so important. The investment compared to doing nothing. I mean, you can't even compare the two.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, what's the value of a human life, you know? And
Absolutely.
I would tell people too, one of the men that we worked with for a very long time, he struggled with addiction. I mean, his ACEs score, just he had experienced such trauma growing up, every imaginable abuse that you can think of. And he just could not stay away from it. I mean, especially if they would lock him up, if he was in solitary confinement for about 14 months because of
Mm-hmm.
his mom bringing drugs into him in the
Hmm.
facility. They never prosecuted her, and they had caught her twice on video, but they would always lock him up in solitary. And that was the worst thing in the world for him, being alone with his thoughts, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I finally told him, and I told her, if she carries anything else in, if they don't prosecute her, I will go to the press
Hmm.
because she needs to stop before he dies.
Yeah.
And but I and he was suicidal because he just could not. And so he was ready to end his life. He called me one day and said, "I'm sending you my Bible." And that
Mhm.
was the only thing he had left that he had taken into the facility with him. And I knew he was going to end his life when he said he was sending me his Bible. And so I called the director, the medical director, and I said, look, and I had talked to them several times. And I said, you need to lock him down and detox him because he can't do this. And they did, because I said to them, I have it documented every time I've had a conversation with you. And I have told you many times he's suicidal, and I've
Yeah.
I've documented it, and that's what it took to get him help. But that's sometimes what you have to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
Family members have to be the advocate when they have loved
Yes.
ones that are locked down and they can't get the help they need inside.
Hmm.
When you think about, I mean, there may be one mental health counselor, and at one time, one of the facilities we dealt with had 1,800 men in it, one mental health worker. And they had a psychiatrist that came in every 3 months to renew prescriptions. So, I mean, we have to advocate for people that don't have a voice. And, when you're lost in addiction and you're surrounded by drugs, by alcohol. I mean, they would make their own alcohol in there. I mean, they were essentially voiceless, and you have to advocate and, make their needs known when they're not able to. Because as sad as it is, our voices carry a lot more weight than someone who's locked up. It's
Hmm.
just, it's sad, but their voice is not often heard, when they are incarcerated. And I will say, if folks have a loved one locked up, there are support groups, which you and I we love support groups. It's so important for folks to take care of themselves, set
Right.
those boundaries, and get the help that they need. Self-care is crucial. You can't take care of anybody if you're not well.
That's
And
right.
so Kairos is a group like Emmaus. Walk to Emmaus is a
Right.
spiritual weekend, and they have gatherings and they have groups that get together. Well, inside it's Kairos, and then Kairos on the outside is for loved ones with of the folks that are locked up. So Kairos is a great group for folks who have loved ones that are incarcerated to connect with.
Yes.
Stop Substance Abuse is ASAC's website, and there are across the Commonwealth there are many meetings listed on there. There's closed closets.
Is it
There's
stopsubstanceabuse.org or .com?
com.
.com.
Mm-hmm.
Stopsubstanceabuse.com. Okay.
Yes.
Hmm.
And there's also servingtricities.org is this region as well.
Okay.
Servingtricities.org is another great website that folks can find if they're in East Tennessee, Southwest Virginia. Both of those websites have resources listed on
And did they have resources for both the helper, which is
them.
like my hope for the helpers, the loved ones,
Mhm.
and also for the person in active addiction? It has both
They
sides of
do.
the coin.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
good.
Yes.
Stopsubstanceabuse.org and servingtricities.com, which
No, opposite.
okay. Stop
.com.
substance abuse, stopsubstanceabuse.com
Uh-huh.
and then
Yes.
servingtricities.org.
.org. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you have another job to do besides talking to me, and I have another job to do besides this. But your information will impact so many people in a positive way and give them hope. And that is, the whole purpose behind Hope for the Helpers, which is my little thing. And it's
Yes.
for, this information is for the loved one, for the helper. It doesn't matter who you are to that person. You are a helper that, is there to support them, to love them, hopefully with boundaries. And there's
Yeah.
all those things we'll talk about in my video series and things. But this information today was right on the money. I knew it would be. It would be exactly what the Lord has placed on your heart and on my heart to talk about, and it will help someone and help lots of people. And I can't thank you enough. Is there anything you want to close with or say? Just is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I appreciate the conversation and the invite. So I would just, say that as as long as there is breath, there is hope,
Yes,
and people shouldn't give up
that's
on
right.
themselves, on their loved ones. And it's just so important that folks share their testimony when they do find wellness as an individual or a family. Those testimonies, they shine the light for people coming behind them.
That's right. And
Yeah.
that's right. When there is breath, there is hope. A person cannot recover if they are dead.
No,
I mean,
no,
let's just be blunt. They can't recover if they've already passed away. So,
that's right.
whatever we have to do to help them stay alive so that they can find recovery, so that God can work on them, He may not be ready for them yet, but whenever He's ready, He will work on them and turn their life into some sort of major purpose. And
That's right.
so, we have to, live and thrive on that concept that, you know, there's hope and there's a purpose
Yes,
for that individual on this earth that
yes,
God has specifically made for them. So,
absolutely.
yes,
He is faithful to redeem our suffering when we let him
yes,
every time.
absolutely. Well, I'm going to hit the stop record so that you and I can continue our conversation. But again, this is Linda Austin, and she's involved in all the different things, ASAC, Hands and Feet Ministry, the Trail Ministry. What it's called? What's the Trail Ministry called again?
Trail Days Ministries.
Trail Days Ministry. And if you look her up online, there'll be lots of other amazing things that she's done in her life. But more than anything, she is just a servant for the Lord, and I appreciate that in you,
Thank you.
and we thank you. So I'm going to
All right, thanks.
stop.